A while ago, I made a video on added characters in sitcoms. And one show that did this constantly was Boy Meets World. This typically led to mixed results. I consider an added character to be a character who wasn't in the main cast in the first season and was added to the main cast later on. So let's take a look at all the times this happened in Boy Meets World. The most popular and important character added to the show is obviously Topanga, who was meant to be a one-off who then got upgraded to a recurring character, then to a main character. However, while she was listed as a main character in the episodes she appeared in seasons 2 and 3, she was not credited in or appeared in every episode until season 4. Her only being a recurring character in season 2 makes sense, because Corey is still dating other people and their relationship is being developed
the long way. Peanut butter jelly the long way.
But by season 3, they're dating. And sure, they do break up halfway through the season, but the season still focuses a lot on her after that, because a lot of the episodes were then about whether or not they'd get back together. And 3 of her 5 absences in the season were when her and Corey were dating. One of them being the second episode of the season, right after they got together, which was a bit weird, especially because, probably in an attempt to make her absence less noticeable, they have Corey mention her, and he, for some reason, talks as if they've been dating for months.
Let's just say a certain Topanga Lawrence has never complained. I mean, sitting on the couch, the two of us have enjoyed many a blockbuster night.
But while it was a long time coming, making her a main character in season 4 was a good move, because the show slowly but surely transitioned into being almost all about this relationship, with it being the show's primary story arc from season 5 onward, as many other story arcs were already concluded, as season 4 ended with Eric getting into college, a big story arc in seasons 3 and 4, and the end of season 3 concluded the story of Sean living with Mr. Turner, another one of the big story arcs for that season. On that subject, Mr. Turner was added in season 2 of the show, and he felt like a good addition right from the start, being another teacher character who had very different methods from Mr. Feeney. And the show did a good job not showing one of their methods being better than the other. Instead, they balanced each other out and both had moments where they learned things from the other. Mr. Turner had entertaining relationships with a lot of characters in the show, like Mr. Feeney, Corey, Eric, and even Corey's parents. But his most interesting relationship became his relationship with Sean. While a lot of his roles in season 2 were him interacting with Corey or interacting with both Corey and Sean, we first see the seeds of where his relationship with Sean will go in season 2, episode 19, Wrong Side of the Tracks, where we see Mr. Turner tell Sean that he thinks Sean is a lot better than he thinks he is.
If you don't know that deep down inside you're all right, I haven't taught you anything at all.
And we first see that Mr. Turner could be the closest thing to a father figure that Sean has, emphasized by the fact at the end of the season we see Sean's dad, who leaves, and Sean then lives with Mr. Turner for almost the entirety of the next season, making him an even more prominent character. While they first brought him in as another teacher, he now has gone beyond that, having an interesting relationship with Sean, leading to some good stories and well done character growth from both of them. However, as I mentioned before, Sean doesn't live with him anymore in season 4, leading to season 4 being his final season, and even then he barely appears in that season. The only reason I've ever heard for his departure from the show was the writers wanting to focus the show more on the kid characters. But in doing that, they just kind of abandoned this whole storyline. In season 4, they have a few episodes that focus on Sean's family coming together and them making an effort to be there for him. But that's about 3 episodes. And once we're halfway through season 4, his family isn't really brought up again for the rest of the season. Sean then moves in with Eric and Jack in season 5, and Sean's parents are consistently absent throughout the rest of the show, with Chet leaving in the beginning of season 5 and then being absent until he comes back in season 6 and dies in the same episode. And Verna just disappears.
Did they tell you that my wife passed on and I'm starting to date again? I'm just kidding. I love the dear woman. Wherever the hell she is.
Sean and Mr. Turner had such a good relationship in season 3, and I honestly feel like they should have kept Sean with him for at least 1 or 2 more seasons. I get wanting to shift the focus of the show, but when you have to drop interesting stories and give them very disappointing endings to do so, it isn't the best idea. Mr. Turner's addition was a great idea. However, his removal was not. However, the season after his departure, we got Jack joining the main cast. He was brought on as Sean's half-brother, which was then barely focused on. It did get a little focus, leading to a funny B-story in Rage and Corey, and some good drama after Chet's death. However, he was mostly relegated to being Eric's sidekick, pretty much giving us another Corey and Sean style relationship. And while I do sometimes feel like their friendship could be better, as Jack becomes a worse and worse friend to him as the show goes on, overall he was a good addition, because Eric needs a straight man to remain funny. A dumb character isn't funny if we're just watching them be dumb. A big part of the humor that comes from any dumb character is other people reacting to them.
You're not speaking French!
And especially as Eric became more dumb and more over the top, having a character who reacts to all the weird stuff he does helped to keep his B-stories funny. And Mr. Feeney was sometimes the straight man to Eric, but as Eric went to college, and before Mr. Feeney became a professor at that college, it was harder and harder to have Mr. Feeney organically appear with Eric. So adding a new straight man who was a student in school with Eric, who also lives with him, was a smart move. So while Jack's original purpose was extremely underutilized, they found a different purpose for him that fans ended up loving, because the Jack and Eric relationship is extremely popular. The same season that introduced Jack also had the introduction of Angela. However, while Jack was added to the main cast immediately, Angela was only a recurring character in this season. However, she was really good in this season. Her and Sean's relationship developed Sean and was a good addition to the show. And she was able to add a new dynamic to the Corey, Sean, and Topanga stories. So of course she was upgraded to a member of the main cast in the next season. However, soon after she became a main character, her and Sean broke up. And while their stories of them talking about getting back together and then just not got exhausting after a while, her addition was still a good thing. And she became a permanent part of the Corey, Sean, and Topanga friend group that the show had a lot of focus on during the college years. I really liked that once she was added to the main cast, they introduced a proper friendship between her and Corey that isn't dropped after that episode and is consistently a thing throughout the season. However, we now have to deal with season 7 and its disappointing ways. Because while the season didn't remove their friendship, it was barely brought up, and they didn't really interact much in this season. However, this wasn't a deal breaker. Without this relationship, she was still a good character, and we got a lot of good moments between her and Sean, with them getting back together this season. I'm just saying that it was disappointing that they introduced this friendship to make her introduction to the main cast work better, and then barely brought it up a season later. The final Boy Meets World character I want to talk about is Rachel. Introduced in season 6, she was brought in as Jack and Eric's roommate, and honestly, I don't think she was needed. Maybe the writers felt they were running low on stories to give Eric and Jack, or wanted to give them a love interest, but I feel like you can do a lot with the simple dynamic Eric and Jack had. It's a classic sitcom dynamic, similar to Joey and Chandler. It's the kind of thing where you can put them in any situation and they'll be entertaining. Which you can see in the episodes in season 7 where it does star just the two of them together and they don't really seem to know what to do with Rachel. Also, adding Rachel made a lot of their stories feel the same. While some of them were still funny, there wasn't as much variety to the situations they'd be placed in as season 5 had. And even when they finally committed to having Jack and Rachel be a couple, it only lasted about 7 episodes. And some of those episodes barely focused on them. However, while I didn't see the point of her addition, that doesn't mean I disliked her as a character. In season 6, I thought she was a pretty good character. She wasn't super interesting, but she had her funny moments and clearly cared a lot about her friends. However, we once again have to deal with season 7's disappointing ways, because I don't really like Rachel in season 7. While she isn't always bad, it usually feels like she barely appears or or she's just rude. In season 6, Rachel wanted Eric to stay in their apartment after her and Jack started dating, and in season 7, she's forcing Jack and Eric to leave their apartment. They tried to give her a dynamic with Topanga and Angela, but they barely did anything with that. And you didn't really believe the friendship, mainly because it just kind of appeared out of thin air, as opposed to getting developed. Even though a lot of other friendships got episodes introducing, expanding on, or strengthening them. Like Eric and Jack getting episodes like The Witches of Pembroke and You Light Up My Union, Corey and Angela getting Friendly Persuasion and Hogs and Kisses, and Sean and Topanga getting This Little Piggy, Hair Today, Goon Tomorrow, and Eric Hollywood. The most Rachel, Topanga, and Angela got was a pretty unfunny and annoying subplot in You Light Up My Union that focused more on Corey and Sean being written the worst they've ever been written in the entire show than it did on the three of them. Obviously, they added a few other characters over the years, like Mr. Williams, who I've talked about before, but these 5 felt like the ones that really made an impact on the show and stayed around for a while. And Rachel was the only one who didn't really feel needed. Sure, Jack's original concept of Sean's brother was barely utilized, but they quickly found a new purpose for it. With Rachel, it just felt like they were desperately trying to find something to do with her in the final season after her relationship with Jack ended, and they weren't really able to. And her addition did just feel like adding in a character because they can, adding to the show's already really big cast, making it pretty much impossible for every character to get something of substance to do in each episode. And I feel like they should have put more focus on concluding or expanding on the stories they already had that didn't get much closure.